Hi, I'm Lawrence LeBrocq, managing partner of Garces, Grabler, and LeBrocq. Welcome to Victim to Victory. We are here today with David Haskins, the co-founder of Speed AI, and also he's in charge of the future and where AI is going to go. So we're going to let him tell you a little bit about his backstory, how he got involved in AI, especially in Speed AI, which involves intake process through AI. Instead of having people that have to answer your calls, not only can you do that, they will monitor the calls, and he'll tell you all of the interesting things that Speed AI can do to help make a law firm better. How you doing today, David?
Great. Thank you for having me, Lawrence.
So what is that new title that you have?
Chief Futurist.
Chief Futurist. Now, we'll go into that a little bit later because AI is changing so fast. I think everybody needs a chief futurist in their organization. So tell us a little bit about how you got involved in Speed AI, because people don't wake up as an 8-year-old and say, you know what? I want to be an intake AI specialist. So how did this happen? How did this course take?
Yeah. So I got my start in law really from when I was a child. My our father was an attorney, and so I was always close to the law. He was also a state legislator, and so I sort of grew up in the law. I was headed to law school in 2010. I was helping a friend found his law practice in 2009. His name was David Ayler out of Charleston, South Carolina, and I was wearing many hats. I was sort of doing everything except signing my name on filings and walking into court. And I really gravitated towards the marketing. So our very first client that we signed from my marketing efforts was really my first lesson in intake. We had a client who contacted us, had a consult scheduled. 4 o'clock run comes around, and the guy didn't show for his consult. And that happens. And at the time, my best friend David Ayler was basically funding his new practice on his credit card. So the difference in how the guy who just sort of kind of fell into this position versus the solo who's got it all riding on his personal credit card, we definitely had two different perspectives on intake. So the guy didn't show at 4 o'clock, and David said, "Where is he?" I said, "I don't know." He says, "We'll call him up." I called the guy up. He said, "Oh, we're still stuck here." He was roofing a school about 15 minutes away. He said, "Well, what school? Let's go find him." So I said, "Okay." He told us where it was. We drove out there, pulled into a dirt lot. The guy was literally on the roof. He climbs down, met with my boss in his Tahoe. It was a criminal charge. He sort of explained the charge to him, explained representation, and told him I could get started on this for $500 down, and then you can make some payments. The guy went back up to the roof, went to his buddies, got the $500, came back down, and that was the first retainer. And so I wish that we could replicate the desire and the drive to sign every client like my buddy did when he first started in his practice. After a few years in that firm, I branched out. I tried to go to law school, didn't make it, but I stayed close to the work, and I branched out and started a marketing company called Drive Law Firm Marketing, where we worked mostly with 1 to 5 lawyer firms on digital marketing, and the intake issue kept coming up. So we would do things like track leads through contact forms, set them up on a lead management portal like Lead Docket. We'd do call rail or other call tracking efforts to sort of track the performance of campaigns. And Lawrence, we could have 2 firms in 2 similar markets whose campaigns are performing similarly. And one firm could look at us on our call and go, "Man, y'all are the best thing that's ever happened in my law firm." And the other firm goes, "I don't really know, but doesn't seem to be working for us." And what we found time and time and again is the difference was their operations and their intake. And so in 2020, we started to formalize an intake coaching program with sort of a fractional intake manager. We called that program the Intake Accelerator. And in that program, we would build out your tech stack. We'd train your team. We'd help you hire, measure bandwidth, run through KPIs, and we would constantly audit every week. We would audit phone calls that the team was performing, and we would at the time we were analyzing 5 calls per agent per week in the program, which in a manual review process is really the most that I've ever heard anyone do. So I thought that our program was very thorough. I would say it's the most thorough, call secret shop or auditing program in the industry. And about 2.5 years ago, my brother Hayden was messing around with AI. He has this really cool pro se practice that he started. He's not an attorney. He sues telemarketers that call him. He's on the do not call list. So he sues them for TCPA violations, and there's a South Carolina violation as well. And he developed this pro se process, and he used AI to sort of perfect it and really move it along. And he said, you know what? I'm training my AI to fight these cases like Nick Rowley. He trained it on running with the bulls and those sort of things. So I'm training this AI to fight like Nick Rowley. We could train it to be an intake coach. We could train it to listen to these calls. And so from there, we started to morph our intake accelerator program to then, instead of listen to 5 random calls, listen to every single call and then surface the most important issues of that week or that month. So we sort of arrived in the legal AI space, the opposite way from most. What I've seen is most is AI or tech companies starting up and then finding the solution in law. And we sort of have been hammering away at this problem for, over a decade and found the solution, through AI.
So explain to us a little bit about Speed AI. Does it work on its own where it answers the calls in AI, or does it work alongside with an existing call center, or both?
It works alongside your existing team. And so the way that it works is it listens to every call that comes through, and you can customize it to your intake lines or your call tracking lines. It listens to every call that comes through. It's going to identify valid leads that you would want. It'll identify the injuries, the case quality on an A through D matrix. It'll identify things like statute of limitations as well. And then it'll apply our best practices analysis to the call to find out if there's anything that could have been done to improve that call, or in the case of our lead rescue feature, if something happened on that call that caused you to miss out on signing a case that you should have signed. And that's what's really proven to be the most valuable component of Speed AI, is the ability to sort of get a second bite at the apple, when something goes wrong on a call. And that
just give an example of what could go wrong on a call and why you would want to call them back. What are some of the examples of what happens?
It could be that the person just didn't handle the call well from the perspective of like customer service or empathy. Sometimes people are taking calls, one call after another, and it tends to be monotonous, data entry type work, and you can't really dive in and focus on connecting with that person. Or it could be a technical issue. It could be that something happened with the connection, and if Speed sees that person was calling about a valid case, and 2 minutes into the call disconnected, or the person said, I'm at work, I gotta go, but we hadn't collected the right contact information or set up any sort of follow-up, it'll flag it and say, hey, you got one that probably didn't even make it into the CRM yet, and this needs to be followed up on. My favorite example was a case where Speed flagged a call. The gentleman called. The call was only like 2 minutes long. He calls, and the very first sentence he says, he almost just breezes over it. He says, I'm calling about a situation with some of my guys. It was a car accident. I don't know what information you need. And the agent just sort of goes into the routine and gets his name, phone, date of accident, says, were you injured? And the guy says, no. I said, oh, okay, well, we'll pass this information along, and if someone can help you, we'll reach back out, right? And so you can see that now, right? The AI realized this guy's not talking about his own accident. It flagged it for review. The intake manager called that gentleman back, he had two employees in the car, as a driver and a passenger. They signed them both up, and the at-fault driver was an 18-wheeler. And the firm said that was in like June of last year. They said that was the best sign up of the year so far, and that firm does about 300 cases a month.
Sure.
And what's crazy about that one, not just that it was able to rescue the case, but if you rely on data and you look into your CRM, if you reviewed that lead in your CRM, you'd see John Smith, date of accident, no injuries, rejected.
Sure.
And you'd go, nothing here, right? So what we really found is we're able now to take the most powerful technology ever known to man and place it in such a high value and critical conversation. I have this saying that the first call to a personal injury law firm is the most valuable conversation in the whole world of phone sales, because there's no other conversation where someone can go from not knowing you to becoming a customer that's worth 10, 20, 50,000 or more in a matter of 15 to 20 minutes without pulling their credit card out.
Sure.
So for us, the amount of opportunity that could be lost at intake was so grand that a solution like this, makes the most sense.
Now, there's so many different phone systems out there and different styles. You'll have an intake department of one or two people, and then you'll have a massive call center. Do you integrate with various phone providers, phone systems?
Yes. So we have 16 VoIP and call tracking phone integrations, as well as our own Speed AI API for a custom integration. We are now the most voice connected legal tech platform out there. So we can connect to more phone systems than any other software platform. We connect to all the major ones, of course, like Zoom, RingCentral, CallRail, Call Tracking Metrics, Zoom Contact Center. So virtually any phone system we're able to connect to.
Now, you gave us a glimpse of the analysis on a case that was almost lost, where two people sounds like they were horrifically injured against an 18-wheeler, which has a significant amount of insurance. So that was a great case that they caught. But talk a little bit about the analysis and coaching that goes in when you're using Speed AI.
Yeah. So there is a team leaderboard feature where you can evaluate agents on their own individual performance. So you can evaluate individual agents over time, and you can spot their frequent their most frequent issues. You could see that Sally puts people on hold for an average of 2 minutes, and Billy is great with hold time, but he doesn't have the empathy that Sally has. Or somebody could have great empathy, but they just don't try for the close the way that they should. So our system is customizable to the firm's specific practice areas and their case criteria, as well as their specific operational process. So some firms would say on these case types, med mal or nursing home, whatever, we don't sign up on the first call, we investigate, so follow this process. And that way, if a wreck or a comp case comes in and it's a sign-on call case, the system is going to look for a sign-on call to be a successful completion of that call. But if it was a med mal case, then as long as you follow the intake or the evaluation process, and then tell them the next steps, or whatever that firm's specific operational process is, it's looking for that.
And now, you were saying earlier when we were offline, Ask Iris, that's your newest component. Talk a little bit about that.
I love Ask Iris. So Ask Iris is sort of like having your intake coach 24/7, able to evaluate any data in your Speed database, and you're able to ask it literally anything. You could say, and I see some of the submissions that people put in, like do a SWOT analysis on my top performers, or rank all my agents on empathy, or I saw one today that was who has the best soft skills on my team. You could ask it, if you were my competitor, who would you want to answer my phone? Or if you're my competitor, who would you want to steal from my team? The great thing about Ask Iris is you get real distilled information, and you don't get just data points of this many completed calls or this, just this whole time. You get real insights into specific issues that each individual agent's having, as well as a broad sense of how your intake's performing at a glance. So you could go in. I had a client where they had a lot of calls that were under a minute long, and I just said, give me a list and analysis of every call under a minute, and tell me why we have so many short calls. And it came back and it said, had all these phone system issues. There was people hanging up as soon as they heard the phone tree message. It sounded too much like it hit the voicemail. They had issues where people would press 1 to go to the intake and it would go to a voicemail. So you can sort of have somebody do the work for you and bring back, actionable insight that you can take action on immediately.
Just out of curiosity, can Ask Iris, can she data mine for other types of cases or injuries?
Yes. So we have a referral feature in the analysis where, let's say, if your firm refers out Social Security cases, and this is pretty common, a firm might do auto and comp and anything that's like questionable, like slip and fall or med mal or dog bites. Then they have like a lit firm that maybe they refer that to. You could delve in and find where those cases are going and find out if the right process has happened on those calls. So, some firms, they'd say, oh, we send all our med mal to Smith and Smith. Well, are you taking the information down or hot transferring it to that firm so that you can make sure you get credit for it? Or are you telling them, go back on Google, type in Smith and Smith and call them? And you could be referring a case over and, not even know it.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about the future. Being the chief futurist at the firm, tell us what's the prognostication for the future? What do you see?
Yeah. Well, I think like one area where there's potential growth in the future is the ethical and responsible use of voice in AI. I think that there was a lot of attention to voice agents. They came out and they were sort of pitched as a replacement for the intake team. And frankly, I don't think that we'll ever be in a place where somebody places a phone call to a law firm in a time of need, in a very traumatic, emotional time, and wants to speak to a voice agent. I think there's a lot of applications where voice agents can sort of tie things together, maybe after hours, or maybe in a phone system where you could see there's 3 people that are about to end their call. Somebody would be available in 45 seconds. You're able to answer it, inform them of that, maybe start some of the call and tell them somebody's going to be available within 30 seconds, that sort of thing. I think that the idea that, like in voice, the technology is like almost there to where it sounds natural enough, but the consumer expectation is not there. And I don't know that it'll ever be there in the context of law. Like, I've done that for dining reservations or, schedule a haircut. But there's, your first impression, I think, in a law firm, I think it'll come down to the branding that firm wants to portray, the brand that they want to carry. So there may be, more like volume firms, but the firms that want to, show that they hold client success and client service at a higher standard are never going to switch away from that. I also think that, even once the technologies, let's say like today, you could snap your fingers and the technology would be perfect. Nobody could ever tell that it's a computer. I think that the more realistic solution is going to be that your own personal agents are going to be reaching out, talking to the firm's agent versus a phone call. And then in that era, it's going to be more appropriate to match the communication or the request with the way that that person's reaching out. So if they reach out via an agent that's doing research on the firm and is contacting, GGL to find out about the firm because they have information on their user's accident, then your agent would be able to communicate with their agent and inform them and sort of sell them. But if they reach out and call, they're likely going to want to talk to a human.
Right. Well, as the chief futurist at Speed AI, tell me, how are you going to position yourselves to compete with the even ups of the world that are trying to develop a one-stop shop for law firms from intake through closing and accounting?
Yeah, well, we're really not trying to compete with them. We actually are, in talks with several of the major case management, and platforms. We've integrated with Lead Docket and Case Status so far, and we're talking with some of the other case management platforms because it's a useful tool that I think any firm is going to want to add to their stack. So if your intake data is communicating with your case management and your sign up data, that's going to be a plus. And I think we have really carved out a niche for ourselves that we're the most advanced intake platform, out there. And we are working hard to stay, sort of ahead of the game on best practices and our use of AI in that regards too. So.
Well, we hope you do. Just for full disclosure, we do use Speed AI, so it's good to hear that you're on top of the game and that you are the chief futurist, so you can stay ahead of the curve when it comes to intake and coaching. Is there anything else you want to add about what Speed AI can do and how somebody could contact you if they're interested in implementing Speed AI?
Sure. If you're interested in Speed AI, we offer a 2-week demo for free. There's no commitment, no credit card needed. We will let you try it out. We can connect and set you up in a matter of minutes. And in many cases, we can pull like the last 30 days of calls and run an analysis on all those. So you have a lot of meat to digest as soon as you get into the platform. And most firms will find that they are saving, cases within that 2-week period. And it sort of, pays for itself. And it's sort of a no-brainer. When you see the cost of case acquisition going up nationally, there's a lot of money coming into the space. We're seeing, some markets, it's over $3,000 a case. And it really, every single case is that much more valuable. And it seems like it's only going up from here. If you want to try the trial, you can go to speed.ai and fill out the demo form. You can learn more about the product and our security and our features as well there.
Well, David, thank you very much for your time, and I wish you luck in the future as the futurist of Speed AI, and stay on top of all the changes and keep implementing and doing what you do. You're doing a great job. And I need that shirt because I should be wearing the Just Sue It shirt, not you.
Yes, I'll get you one.
All right, be well.